not on a holiday, but let that be our little secret. Today I will show you how to make a women's sun hat. First, make sure the racking handle is in its lowest position. Raise 70 needles on the front bed of the machine. Place the edge springs on the last working needles and slide the trip cam for the row counter to the right. Arrange the needles in 1-to-1 division and place the right edge spring on the last working needle. Set the front lock to N and the stitch size to 1. Set the back lock to GX. Insert the black strippers and take the waste yarn. I'm using 1 strand of acrylic yarn. Now knit 1 row, raise the needles on the front bed and put the right edge spring on the last needle. Tap on the needles to tighten the yarn and increase the stitch size to 4. Knit 1 row to finish the cast on, increase the stitch size to 5 and knit 20 rows with the waste yarn. Tap on the needles when knitting the first few rows. Set the front lock to BX and increase the stitch size to 6. Move the lock to the color changer and take the main yarn. I'm using 2 strands of acrylic yarn. Now raise pushers and the row working needles on the front bed. Lower the front bed and attach weights to the waste yarn. I will attach 2 weights to the ends, then I will use 2 7-shaped weight hangers in the middle. Put the leftmost pusher in resting position and knit 2 rows. Put the next pusher in resting position and knit 2 rows. Continue the same way until you put 5 pushers in resting position. The row counter must be at 10 rows. Don't clear the row counter. Slightly raise the needles from 41 to 44, then use 2 double-decker tools and change their places. That will make cables on the bend of the hat. Before starting to make the hat, knit a test swatch and find the right stitch size settings for the cables. Now lower 1 pusher and knit 2 rows. Continue the same way until the row counter is at 20 rows. Don't clear the row counter. Raise the same needles and use the double-decker tools to change the places of the stitches. After I knit the first wedge, I will show you the process up close. Now continue the same way. Put 1 pusher in resting position and knit 2 rows. Repeat these steps until the row counter is at 30 rows. Now change the places of the stitches again to make the cables. Each time you have to cross the stitches the same way. Now continue lowering the pushers until the row counter is at 40 rows. Use the double-decker tools and continue making the cables. Now put 30 pushers on left in resting position. You must have only 20 pushers in working position on the right side. Knit 1 row, slightly raise the first non-working needle, take the yarn from the lock and put it into its hook. Then knit to the right. Put 5 pushers in resting position and knit 1 row. Raise the first non-working needle and put the yarn from the lock into its hook. Knit to the right and repeat these steps until there are only 5 pushers left on the right. This procedure will avoid the formation of holes when short rowing. Now start raising the pushers in groups of 5 and knit 2 rows. When you have 20 pushers in working position on the right side, raise all pushers in working position and knit 2 rows to finish the first wedge. You have to knit 6 wedges to make the hat. Now you can see the close-up shots. That's how I'm making the cables. And now you can see how I'm making the short rows. Just pick the yarn and lay it on the hook. If you use the first digit of the row counter to count the wedges, you will have 5 wedges and 56 rows for the last one. When you knit all wedges, move the lock to the color changer, take the waste yarn and knit 20 rows. Take an empty eyelet or leave all eyelets in the color changer. Take off the weights and slide the lock to the left to remove the knitted piece. Now it should look like this. First, you have to sew both ends together using the Kitchener stitch. Now I will remove the waste yarn. I will show you a very cool way to make the edge. Take the triple decker tool and pick 3 stitches from the edge. You can see up close. Remove the strippers and slide the front lock to the left. Lower the front bed, set the back lock to N and the stitch size to 6. Put the hat between the beds and attach the 3 stitches to the needles on the back bed. Attach weight to the hat and raise 1 empty needle to the left and 1 to the right of those 3 needles. Now knit 10 rows. Rehang the weight higher, then use the triple decker tool, pick the next 3 stitches and hang them on the same 3 needles. Now knit 10 rows again. This will create a beautiful wavy edge. As you can see, I'm attaching the weight to the right side of the stitches. That way it's easier to rehang the next group of 3 stitches. Did you know that it is possible to knit using only the back lock? Tell me in the comments below. You can see the process from a different point of view. Now I'm hanging the last 3 stitches. I won't need 10 rows now. I will use the single decker tool and I will cast off the stitches. When only one stitch remains, take off the weight, cut the yarn from the lock and pull it through the last loop. Now you have to hide the tails. I will make several knots and cut them short because they won't be visible at the end. Do you like what the edge looks like? To shape the hat, I will sew metal wire around the edge. The wire will hold the hat in shape. First I will tape the end of the wire. Later I will remove that tape. I will hide the wire in the center of an I-cord. Now I will have to sew the I-cord to the edge of the hat. I am almost done. I will use pliers to cut the ends to the final size. I don't have a joiner, so I will use a piece of heat shrink tube. To make it stronger, tape both ends with duct tape and put the heat shrink tube over the duct tape. Heat the tube with a lighter and wait until it cools off. Then sew the rest of the wire. It should look like this. If you want, you can sew another wire to the bend of the hat using the same method. I found out that I have missed making the last segment of the cable, so I can sew some flowers in the middle. Of course, I know that this one is not suitable. And that's the final result. I will be happy to see photos of your hats on my Facebook page. Thank you for watching, have a nice day and see you in my next video.